Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good evening, all. I am Bibasi Babu. I will be dealing with a literary criticism paper. Are you familiar with the syllabus? You all have the textbook, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in this course, we are having 5 blocks and there will be 4 units in each block. So are you familiar with literary criticism?
Yes, about few topics were taught. Just 2-3 classes we attended and we know about it. Yeah. And we did assignments, so few topics were covered in that also.
Here, as a part of the MA course?
Yes. Offline classes we attended. So Kishore sir took some topics.
Okay. So we can start. Today I'm going to talk about criticism, what is criticism, and we'll be looking into Aristotle's Poetics as well in this class. I'm going to share the screen. Just a second. Is PPT visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are going to look into criticism. So, in the first block, we will be discussing about the nature and function of criticism and some of the historical survey of criticism from classical period to romantic period. We'll be looking into Aristotle's Poetics and Samuel Johnson's Preface to Shakespeare, and we'll be looking into Wordsworth and Coleridge in the first block. So we can start. So criticism. Etymologically, the word criticism is derived from the Greek word kritikos or krinein, meaning to judge. The word criticism itself means to judge. So from this you can understand that it is a way of judging a text, judging a literary work. Criticism is the exercise of judgment on works of literature. We will be having literary works, and the criticism, the person who do criticism on literary work is called, what is that person called?
Critic.
Can anyone tell me?
Critic.
Critic, yes, critic. So the duty of the critic is to judge a piece of work. A literary work will be judged by a critic. It is an act of bringing out both the merits and demerits of a work of art and assessing or judging its value and significance. So, what does this criticism do? The criticism actually brings out the merits and demerits in a work. The critic will analyze the text and finds out the merits and demerits, and they assess it and they judge it. They will put forward the value and significance of the work. The critic passes through various stages and undertakes different functions. So, critic, what are the duties of a critic? The critic tries to understand the work, analyze it, tries to explain it, interpret it, define it, classify it, assess it, and then judge it. Did you understand?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you have any doubt at any point, you can stop me and ask, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
So criticism is analyzing or judging a work and to find out the value and significance and to bring out the merits and demerits of that work. Why do we need criticism? Do we need criticism?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think? Yes, we need criticism, right?
Yes.
Without criticism, it is difficult to put a standard itself, right? There are lots of writers around us. So we need criticism to bring out the theme, like we have to analyze the theme, we have to bring out the demerits also. So this should not be represented. So there is always a standard or judgment necessary to keep a standard work. So the need of criticism, the first is, it draws inspiration from life. Same as literature. You know literature, right? Literature is the study about life. So same as literature, criticism also draw inspiration from life. They represent life, right? What is happening in a life. If you analyze, if you might have all read some kind of novels or poetry, drama, right? So in the literary work, what you see is there will be a hero or there will be a theme and they will discuss about it. It is mainly drawn from life. So the readers will get an idea about life. And true criticism is illuminating. It gives us a fresh point of view. It breaks a new ground. It sharpens our sensibilities. And it is also thought-provoking. Okay. And we can also say that criticism can be seen as an instrument in the study of literature. Through criticism, we can study literature. Okay. So if you have the textbook, you should read it. Okay. I am just giving you the main points. You should read the textbook. And if you have any doubt after reading it, you can ask me in the next class also. So these are some of the important points that you have to study. With these points, the points which I'm discussing in the class, you have to read the text based on these. Sure. Next is the beginning of criticism. Where does the criticism begin? So it actually began in ancient Greece around the 5th century BC. The major critics at that period were Achilles, Sophocles, Euripides, Socrates, and Aristophanes. And Aristophanes is regarded as the first critic to discuss the concerns of literature. Who is regarded as the first critic? Aristophanes. Right. Remember the name, okay? So the beginning, where did the criticism begin? It began in ancient Greece. So when you study from the beginning, around 5th century BC, in ancient Greece, criticism began. The major proponents of criticism at that time were Achilles, Sophocles, Euripides, Socrates, and Aristophanes. And Aristophanes is regarded as the first critic to discuss the concern of literature. He is considered as the first critic. Can you name some of other famous critics? Modern critics. Have you heard about any names? No idea.
Yes. There is one name. We wrote about it in the assignment. Not getting the name. Johnson.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't hear. Are you saying Ben Jonson's name? Have you heard about T.S. Eliot?
T.S. Eliot, yes.
Just randomly bringing some names.
Samuel Johnson.
Yeah, Samuel Johnson. Yeah, okay. We'll be discussing a lot of people as a part of this course. Okay, I'm just asking just to make you involved in the class. Next, function of criticism. So the first critical inquiry began with Aristophanes. And according to Aristophanes, what he said is, the critic's function is to investigate what constitutes poetic excellence. So Aristophanes said that the duty of the critic or the primary function of the critic is to investigate the poetic excellence, the qualities that brings out the poetic excellence. The famous work of Aristophanes is Frogs, F-R-O-G-S, Frogs. And he talks about this critical idea in Frogs. Then we have Plato. Plato assigns a didactic and utilitarian function to criticism. So he gave a moral function to criticism, while banishing poets from his republic on the grounds that the poets are liars and they incite passion. So Plato, what he did is, after Aristophanes, we are looking into Plato. Plato gave a didactic function or a moral function to the criticism. And he said that his famous work is Republic. Plato's famous work is Republic. And in his Republic, what Plato did is he banished poets. He said we need no poets. There is no need for poets because poets are liars. Whatever the poets say, it is lies. It's not true. That is what Plato said. After Plato, we have Aristotle. Aristotle assigns legislative and judicial function to criticism in the theory of drama and poetry in his Poetics. He asserted the superiority of poetry over philosophy. Aristotle's famous work is Poetics. Aristotle gave a definition, or he explained about criticism in his work Poetics. Are you getting my ideas? Are you able to understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Aristotle, what he did is he assigns a legislative function and a judicial function. Judicial is somewhat like the judgment. Okay, it's a judgment of work based on certain rules. Legislative is also, there are certain rules for the art of writing in order to keep the standard of the work. So he assigns legislative and judicial function in his theory of drama and poetry, and he explained about it in his work Poetics. And Aristotle also said that poetry is superior than philosophy. Poetry is the superior most writing than philosophy. Then next, the Philip Sidney. According to Philip Sidney, the central purpose of criticism was to defend poetry and to emphasize its moral value. He said that the criticism should defend poetry and it should emphasize the moral values. He gave a moral function to criticism. Then we have Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson considers the judgment of poets to be the faculty of poets, not the critic. So he said that the poet should be the one who should judge. It is not the critic who should judge, but it should be the poets who should judge. Then we have neoclassical criticism. Neoclassical critics, they were concerned with illustrating the idea that poetry instructs and delights. Poetry has dual function. At the same time, it instructs and it also delights. Then we have romantic criticism. In romantic criticism, they say that the function of criticism is aesthetic. It is aesthetic. It is in order to bring out the, in order to give out the importance of imagination, emotion, and expression of personality. They have to promote appreciation and enjoyment of literature. It is just not to study. It is not just instruction. It also should bring out the enjoyment. It also should appreciate the literature. Then we have Hazlitt. Hazlitt said that the critic's role is recording his impressions. The critic should record his impressions while reading a text. Then we have Arnold. Matthew Arnold said that disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world. He bring out the touchstone method. There's a method to compare the literary works, and then we have to learn, and the critic should be a disinterested person. He should not favor any of the part, and he should learn and propagate what is best. Okay. This is what Arnold said. We will be discussing about Matthew Arnold in the coming classes. We will be discussing his essays. Then the very important function of criticism is said by T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot is very important when we talk about literary criticism. The function of criticism is commentation and exposition of work of art by means of written words. He said that it is very important to express through written words. Later, he explains it as elucidation of works of art and the correction of taste. Through the criticism, the critic should bring out the literary taste. In Frontiers of Criticism, he modifies it as promoting the understanding and enjoyment of literature. So basically what T.S. Eliot said that we have to, or the critic should evaluate the text by bringing out the enjoyment as well. They should understand and they should bring out the enjoyment of the literary work, and it should be written, it should be expressed by means of written words. Then we have I.A. Richards. I.A. Richards, according to I.A. Richards, the function of criticism is to set up a critic, a judge of values. A critic should be a judge of values. They should bring out the values in a literary work. Then we have F.R. Lewis. According to F.R. Lewis, the function of criticism is evaluation. They should evaluate the literary work. And then we have New Critics. And New Critics said that in New Criticism, there is a close scrutiny. The text will be analyzed in depth. They will be analyzed, the text, each and every point in the text will be analyzed. And it is the duty of the critic to analyze the text. Without leaving any single point, the text should be scrutinized very closely. That is what New Critics says. Did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Any idea about? Okay. Now, there is inductive criticism. Inductive criticism is advocated by Moulton. Moulton bring out the inductive criticism. It examines and judges literature on the basis of set standard laws of literature in the spirit of pure scientific investigation. The inductive criticism considers the function of criticism as a pure scientific investigation. It is a scientific process and there are certain standard laws. Already there are certain laws and the literature should be examined from these laws. So it should be judged based on these standard laws of literature and then they have to judge it based on it. It does not apply any external standards or looks for the laws of art within the practice of arts. So according to inductive criticism, they should follow the given laws and they should not focus on any other external standards. They should not focus any other laws that are said in the practice of arts. It should be the laws of literature already given out. It is a scientific investigative process. So the critic should examine and judge a literature based on these set laws. Understood? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next is principles of criticism. There are basically three principles for criticism. The principle of truth. The truth is the final test, right? The truth is the final merit. If the literature does not correspond with the fact of life, it cannot be great. The literary works are basically about human life. It represents human life. So according to the principle of truth, the true fact about life should be represented in literary works. So if it is not about the facts of life, it cannot be great. In order for a literary work to be great, they should represent human life, truth about human life. Okay. Then principle of symmetry. And the literary work should be in a proper arrangement. It should be in a proper arrangement. There should be proper unity. Without that, the literary work is not good. In order to for a literary work to be great, it should be arranged properly. It should have an organic unity. It should have a continuity also. The principle of idealization. So art is regarded as an idealization of experience. So there will be certain unpleasant things around us. There will be some unpleasant things in life. So a literary work should not be like, okay, this is very unpleasant, so I am not going to represent it in the literary work. An author should not think about like that, right? Even if it is unpleasant, all these things should be represented in the writing. Then only it can then only the critic will be able to judge it. Then only they can bring out the merit and demerits of a work. So basically, there are three principles. Principle of truth. A literary work should always represent truth about human life. The principle of symmetry. The literary work should be arranged in a organic, it should have an organic unity. It should be arranged properly. Then we have principle of idealization. The critic should be able to judge the propriety or otherwise the experience presented in the work of art. Next is kinds of criticism. There are different kinds of criticism. First is theoretical criticism. Theoretical, it is based on certain theories. It proposes a theory of literature. Theoretical criticism proposes a theory of literature. It evolves general principles to be applied to identifying and analyzing works of literature. So the theoretical criticism lays out certain principles and certain general principles that are to be applied in order to identify and analyze a work of literature. It pays attention not to particular works but to literature in general. So in theoretical criticism, we are not analyzing any particular work, but we are analyzing literature as general. We are analyzing literature in general. So it is believed that theoretical criticism began in England with Sidney's Apology for Poetry. Philip Sidney's Apology for Poetry laid the foundation for theoretical criticism. After that, we have works of Dryden, then Addison's essays. So all these contributed to theoretical criticism. And theoretical criticism came to an abrupt end in the 19th century with Coleridge's Biographia Literaria. With the publication of Biographia Literaria by Coleridge, the theoretical criticism came to an end. Is it clear? Do you want me to repeat it?
Clear, ma'am.
Clear. Okay. Next is practical criticism. We'll be discussing about practical criticism in depth. One of the major proponent of practical criticism is I.A. Richards. So practical criticism is also called applied criticism. Practical criticism is also called applied criticism. It concerns itself with the discussion and analysis of particular writers and works. In practical criticism, the focus will be on any particular work or particular writers. It will be discussing about or analyzing about a particular work or writer. Some of the famous exponents of practical criticism are I.A. Richards, T.S. Eliot, Clement Brooks. Okay. Next is Impressionist criticism. Impressionistic criticism or Impressionistic criticism is a record of critics' personal responses to a work of art. So the primary duty of a critic is to be impartial. Okay, the critic should not favor, the critic should not represent what they personally feel about a work. Sometimes I might not like a work, but some other peoples will like. So I can't just blindly criticize a work based on my personal responses. Okay. So impressionistic criticism, what they do is what the critic do here is they give their personal responses to a work of art. Okay. So they are not basically evaluating a work. The importance are the critic gives importance to the feelings, impressions, and felt experience. Okay, some of the famous some of the famous writers or critics in this impressionistic criticism are Hazlitt, Walter Pater, and some of the romantic critics also give importance to the feelings and impressions and experience rather than the proper criticism. Okay. Next is judicial criticism. Judicial criticism seeks to pronounce judgment on works of literature on the basis of certain rules. There are already certain rules, and a work of art or a literary work will be analyzed based on these certain rules. Can you tell me who gave importance to judicial criticism? And we have legislative criticism next coming up. We already discussed, just now we discussed about a critic who considered the function of criticism as judicial and legislative. Who was it? Any idea?
Is it the judges, the Supreme Court?
Aristotle.
Sorry.
Yes, Aristotle, yes. Aristotle gave importance to judicial and legislative criticism. Yeah. So judicial criticism, what they do is, it has nothing to do with a judge or court, okay? I'm just saying judicial criticism, what we do here is, there will be certain rules and a literary work will be analyzed based on these rules. So the judgment of work will be done based on certain rules. Mainly neoclassical writers used judicial criticism. Okay. Dr. Johnson is regarded as a powerful exponent of judicial criticism. Remember it. Dr. Johnson is considered as a powerful exponent of judicial criticism. And neoclassical classical age used judicial criticism. Next is legislative criticism. It is a form of critical inquiry which lays down rules for an art of writing. They have certain rules for writing, largely based on the standard works of literature in Greek and Latin. So literary works began in Greek and Latin. So there are certain classical writings, right? Classical work of art in Greek and Latin. So they will be taken, and there are certain rules laid down based on these standard works. So the in legislative criticism, the critic should follow these rules. They should understand the merits of these Greek and Latin classical works, and then they have to analyze the literary work. And this kind of criticism, that is legislative criticism, is addressed to the writer rather than the reader. It is addressed to the writer. So the main purpose of legislative criticism is to make the writer do well. They have making the writer to do well in writing. Aristotle's Poetics, I.A. Richards, Philip Sidney, Northrop Frye, R.S. Crane are some of the critics who used legislative criticism. Next is aesthetic criticism. Aesthetic criticism treats literature as an art. It considered criticism as an artistic work. It is a form of art and independent activity of mind. So what a critic do is, critic will be analyzing a work. So it is considered as an independent activity of mind, having an end of its own, which may or may not coincide with that of religion or morality or science or politics. It can either be a coincidence, it cannot be. It is about an independent activity of mind. So aesthetic criticism considers or treats literature as an art and independent activity of mind. In that sense, they are analyzing a literary work. So aesthetic criticism can be found in Elizabethan age, in the 17th century, in the works of Dryden. No.
Is everyone there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what happened to Biba ma'am?
We don't know,
She
ma'am.
got
There is not
disconnected.
audible.
Maybe she got disconnected. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, she disconnected.
Hello, am I audible? Hello,
Yes,
am I
yes, ma'am.
audible?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can
Yes,
hear you.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had an issue with network. Oh, I can't share the screen. I'm
Fine,
not
ma'am. Carry on. Yeah.
Is it okay? It's not able to share my screen.
That's fine. You can.
Okay, okay, madam.
It's okay. Okay, fine. Yeah. So where were we like? When did you? What did you last? I was explaining. When did the connection went off? I was just talking. Then I realized that the connection was went off.
Aesthetic criticism, ma'am.
Which one?
Aesthetic criticism.
Aesthetic criticism. Okay. 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 Then again, next was descriptive criticism. Okay. Descriptive criticism is devoted to the study of individual works. Yes? Are you saying anything? Okay. So the study of individual works and authors. Descriptive criticism is devoted to the study of individual works and authors. They will examine their aims, methods, and effects of writing. Some of the famous the traces of descriptive criticism can be found in the works of Dryden and Johnson. Next is evaluative criticism. It is concerned with the assessment or evaluation of the significance of a work of art on the basis of the standards which may be aesthetic, moral, or personal. So in the evaluative criticism, what they do is they assess or evaluate a work. They assess or evaluate a work of art based on the basis of the standards.
Sorry to interrupt you, madam. Can you please share the notes?
What
That
happened?
is quite easy to understand. Can you please share that notes, madam?
Actually, you know what happened is when my network went off, uh, now I am not able to share the screen.
Okay,
I am no longer the co-host, so it was very difficult for me to share the screen.
Okay, no problem. Because that was quite easy at once.
Yeah, I know. So I'm trying to share the screen, but I couldn't. So the host disabled the participant screen sharing. It is what it says here. Yeah, I'll try again. If it is coming up, I will do it. Okay. So next was evaluative criticism. In evaluative criticism, it is concerned with the assessment or evaluation of the significance of work of art on the basis of the standards which may be aesthetic, moral, or personal. So they will be evaluating or assessing a work of art based on certain standards. That is evaluative criticism. Then we have mimetic criticism. In mimetic criticism, what they do is they consider a work of art as an imitation or representation or reflection of the world and of human life. So it is considered as a reflection of human life. Wait a second. So I have informed that I am unable to share the screen. So I hope it will be resolved soon. Okay, next is pragmatic criticism. Pragmatic criticism, here it views the work as something which is constructed. If they considered it as a work of art as something constructed to achieve certain effects on the audience. So it may be constructed on certain aesthetic pleasure, instruction, kinds of emotion. So it's considered as a thing that is been constructed to achieve certain effects to the audience. Okay, I can share the screen now. So once I am sharing the screen, it would be difficult to know if, can you see the PPT?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I hope I won't have network issue again. So next is, so we discussed about aesthetic criticism, then we discussed about descriptive criticism. We also discussed about evaluative criticism, then mimetic criticism and pragmatic criticism. I was talking about pragmatic criticism. In pragmatic criticism, they considered it as a work as a something that is constructed on certain principles in order to give certain effects on the audience. So in the works of Horace or some of the 18th century criticism, we can see the use of pragmatic criticism. Next is expressive criticism. Expressive criticism treats a work in relation to its author. They treats a work in relation to the author. It defines poetry as an expression or overflow of feelings or as a product of the poet's imagination. So in expressive criticism, we consider a literary work as the poet's imagination. It is the ideas or the thoughts or the feelings or the perceptions of the writer or the poet. It judges the work on the basis of its sincerity. Next is objective criticism. In objective criticism, it considers the work as an autonomous object. It considered it as an independent object, self-sufficient object, which is free or which is free of extrinsic factors, or it rejects the extrinsic references. Extrinsic references includes the poet, the audience, the society. That is extrinsic. Intrinsic is the inherent factors, inbuilt factors of the writing, like the coherence, equilibrium, integrity, complexity, format, structure. All those are intrinsic factors. So in objective criticism, the extrinsic factors will be rejected. We no longer look at the poet, we no longer look into the audience, we no longer look into the society, we only look at the text, and we consider the text as an independent object. Okay. New criticism, Chicago School, Russian formalism. In all these age, we can see objective criticism. Then we have textual criticism. In textual criticism, it seeks to establish what the author actually wrote. They are analyzing what the author actually wrote, or they intended to be the final version of each work. It is a collection of printed text and available monuments of each work to identify the correct source. So in textual criticism, we will be analyzing the correct source. We will be analyzing the original manuscript, the original work where the author has represented something. So we will be analyzing, or the critic will be analyzing, the actual writing of the author. Okay. Then we have ontological criticism. In ontological criticism, there is a close scrutiny of the text. Same like new criticism, where they closely analyze a text without any consideration of the extrinsic factors. We don't look into the poet or the writer. We don't look into their biography, no historical aspects, no sociological, psychological, no other aspects. We only analyze the text. The text will be closely analyzed. We consider a poem as a poem and not nothing else. The critic will pay more attention to the structure and texture of the poem. He studies the words, diction, language, image, meter, tone, theme, etc. Ontological criticism is practiced by the new critics like John Crow Ransom, Clint Brooks, Alan Tate. All these are examples, practitioners of ontological criticism. Next is historical criticism. In historical criticism, the art or the work of art is set against a background. So if you analyze the novels, or if you look into the writing style, drama or poetry or novels, if it is set in a certain period, they will describe about that period, like for you to understand easily. If you watch a film, consider you're watching a film which is set in 1945 or 1940s, imagine like a movie based on the independent movement or during the Indian independence movement. So the entire aspects will be based on that historical period, the clothing, the food, the talk, the language they use. So that is the age, the time period will be reflected in the film, right? Similarly, in historical criticism, in the work of the literature will be based on a particular period, and the elements of that period can be seen in the work. Okay, the writer writes about an age, the social about the society at that time. That is what historical criticism do. Then we have biographical criticism. Can you understand this? Are you getting it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going a bit fast because we have time only till 6. Next is biographical criticism. Biography includes the, what is biography? The author's personal life, the author and his life. It studies the writer's family background, ancestry, personal circumstances, about the friends, professions, his ideology. So all the personal factors of the writer will be analyzed in a biographical criticism. Then we have comparative criticism. In comparative criticism, a literary work will be compared with another work of the similar nature or of the similar language or of the similar theme. Okay, here it's an example of touchstone method. Arnold's touchstone method is similar. It uses the comparative criticism. Okay, a work of art will be analyzed based or compared with another work of the same theme or same nature or same language. Okay. So this is about the first chapter. So here we discussed what is criticism, what do we mean by criticism, and then we looked into the need of criticism, the beginning of criticism, and then the function of criticism. Then we discussed about certain kinds of criticism. So based on these points, what you got in today's class, read the textbook, then you will get the better idea of what we talked about today. You have 1 week time, so you can read the textbook. Okay. And if you have any doubt, you can ask in the next class. So this is about the first unit. We can today we can discuss Aristotle's Poetics also. So in the first unit, what we did is we discussed about the general idea about criticism, right? And in the coming modules, what we are going to do is we are going to look into each period, each literary period, and we will take one example. First, we will discuss about Aristotle. Then we talk about Samuel Johnson. Then Wordsworth and Coleridge comes in the romantic criticism. And we have Matthew Arnold, T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, Clement Brooks. And then we again come to the postmodern criticism like Marxist criticism, psychoanalytic criticism, new criticism, feministic criticism, and even Indian idea of criticism. So all these will be discussed. So first detailed study is Aristotle's Poetics. So Aristotle is basically from 384 to 322 BC. He is considered to be one of the important critic. Aristotle is considered to be one of the important critic. Aristotle's important works are of 3 kinds. Aristotle wrote about a lot of about different aspects of human knowledge and activity, and his important works are of 3 kinds. One is literary essays. He wrote literary essays. Then he wrote studies on constitutions, and he also wrote treatises which are intended to be delivered as lecture to the students. So these are the 3 categories of his writings. The very famous work of Aristotle is Poetics. Poetics is believed to be have written by Aristotle after he settled as a teacher and investigator in Athens around 335 BC. So it is believed that Poetics was written around 335 BC. Okay, so Poetics is very important in the in literature. It is a landmark. It's a landmark book. Okay, it's an epoch-making, a thought-provoking work, an important landmark in the history of literary criticism. It is one of the most influential books of the world. Okay. So the structure of the Poetics is, it is divided into 26 brief chapters. It is divided into 26 brief chapters, and Each chapter is divided into 6 parts, and it can be divided into six parts. Chapter 1 to 5 offers an introduction to poetry. First 5 chapter gives an introduction to poetry. It classifies, it gives different kinds. It includes tragedy and comedy. In chapter 6 to 11, discusses with tragedy. So Aristotle's idea of tragedy is very important. And he also discusses about poetic diction. He also talks about narrative poetry. He talks about epic. So listen, look, he talks about poetry, he talks about tragedy, poetic diction, narrative poetry, epic, and he also details about critics, objections of critics. That is what he all deals in his Poetics. So we can look into each concepts put forward by Aristotle. First, his theory of imitation or mimesis. Theory of imitation or mimesis by Aristotle. You guys are here, no? You can hear, right? Are you getting the ideas? Okay, yes, fine. So theory of imitation. So according to Aristotle, it is the principle of imitation which unites poetry with other fine arts. So a poetry is united with other works of art through the principle of imitation. Though he borrowed the term from Plato, he reinterprets it to mean as an act of imaginative creation. So, Plato was the first to use the idea of imitation. So, what Plato said is that poetry is an imitation. According to Plato, poetry is an imitation. And he said that it is twice removed from reality, and poetry is the mother of all lies. It is not true. It is just an imitation, or it's just a copy. It's just a copy. It's not true. But what Aristotle said is, he rejected the idea of Plato. He reinterpreted imitation and said that it is an imaginative creation. It is an imaginative creation. The idea of imitation is an imaginative creation. Poetry is the imitation of men in action. According to Aristotle, poetry is the imitation of men in action, including their inner passions and external activities. And again, according to Aristotle, there are 3 objects of artistic imitation. They are ethos, pathos, and praxis. Ethos means the permanent mental disposition which are revealed in human character. Pathos is the transient emotional moods and feelings. Praxis is an action which is inward. If you, for example, are you familiar with Shakespeare's work? I'm just giving an example. So, for example, take any novel or any drama. There you will have a character. We will be reading the novel through the character's development, right? So there will be a permanent mental disposition of the character. There will be the mental state of the character. Then we have the moods, emotions, and feelings of the characters coming up in each stage. Then there will be some actions that the character do in order to cope up with his emotions, right? All these things you can see, right? So that is how an artistic imitation works. There are 3 objects: ethos, pathos, and praxis. That is what Aristotle says. Aristotle's theory of imitation is an answer to Plato. So Plato charged that, what did Plato said? He said that poetry is an imitation. It is twice removed from reality. It is not real. It is lies. It is full of lies. It is not true at all. That is what Plato said. Plato said that God created this world and God had an idea in his mind about this world. So this world itself is not real. The world which we live itself is not real because it is the idea of God. So when a poet imitates the idea, or which the world which we live is already a copy, and when the writer or poet copies the world, it is again twice removed from reality. So it is full of lies. Did you understand? Do you want me to repeat it again? Do you want me to repeat Plato's idea? Did you understand? Do you want me to repeat it?
No, ma'am. Understood.
Okay, fine. Next is Aristotle's theory of tragedy. See, this is very important. Okay, even when someone wakes you from your sleep and asks, what do you mean by Aristotle's theory of tragedy? You should say the first quotations, whatever I am typed in the first quotation. You should learn it by heart. You should understand it and you should learn it. Okay. According to Aristotle, tragedy is, so according to Aristotle, tragedy is the imitation of an action. Tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious. It's very serious. It's complete and of a certain magnitude in a language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play in the form of action, not of narrative, through pity and fear affecting the proper catharsis of such emotions. So what Aristotle talks about tragedy is that it is an imitation of, we can divide it into parts and analyze it. It is an imitation of an action that is serious. So imitation of an action. Action is what? An activity of man. So there will be certain activities and they'll take those activities. It is very serious. It's a very serious activity and it is it's complete. The action is of a serious theme. It will be thematically very serious. It's complete and it has certain magnitude. Certain magnitude the action contains. Certain magnitude means it has a size. It means it should not be too long or it should not be too short. It should be of a medium size. Length. It's tragedy, right? It's a tragedy. That means it used to be performed on a stage. For example, we can take Shakespeare's tragedy, Hamlet, Othello, King Lear. If we take any one of the tragedy, for example, we take Macbeth. It's tragedy. It should be performed. If it is too long, it will be boring, right? If it is too short, it won't be complete. So it should have a certain magnitude. If the theme discussed in the tragedy will be very serious. It is written in a language that is embellished with the certain kinds of artistic ornaments. There will be meter, rhythm, there will be song. Okay, these are certain parts. It is written in dialogue form. Right, that is also a language method. It's written in a dialogue form. There will be songs as a part of choric part. There will be words. It gives. Why do they have music in between? In order to give a pleasure. So there will be a language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, which can be found in different parts of the play, in the form of action, not of narrative. So when you look into a drama, when you look into a tragedy, it is in the form of action. The actions are laid out, not the narrative. No, it's not like a novel. Novel is a narrative form, right? It tells a story. But in a tragedy, it is in the form of action. One person does something, next is another person doing something. Like it's full of action, not of narrative form. And the tragedy evokes the feelings of pity and fear. Once the audience finish watching a tragedy, we feel pity for the hero. For the protagonist, we feel pity. We also feel fear by seeing this tragic incident. We'll realize, oh, it can also affect us also. This can also happen to our lives also. So there will be a fear in us. This affects a proper catharsis. Catharsis is purification. Through such emotions, there will be a purification process happening inside the audience. This is what Aristotle's idea of tragedy is. Did you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Understand? Understood. Okay, this is very important. Okay, study this. Aristotle's theory of tragedy is very important. Next, there are 6 formative elements or constituent parts of tragedy. So there are 6 elements of a tragedy. They are plot, character, diction, thought, spectacle, and song. These are the 6 elements or 6 constituent parts of a tragedy. So we can look each of it. Plot. Plot is considered as the soul of tragedy. It means the arrangement of incidents. Plot is the arrangement of incidents. So there will be a lot of incidents happening. Plot is the proper arrangement, the chronological arrangement of the incidents is called plot. And in plot, we have dramatic unities, unity of time, unity of place, and unity of action. These are the 3 dramatic unities set by Aristotle. So according to Aristotle, a drama should or tragedy should possess a unity of time, unity of place, and unity of action. That is, a tragedy should take place in a humanly possible time, in a humanly possible location, and the action should be humanly possible. That is what Aristotle says. Aristotle divides tragic plot into 3 kinds. He said that there are 3 kinds of plots. That is simple. It will be a very simple. It's as a continuous movement without any violent or sudden changes. It will be very smooth. Then there will be complex, which have the complex plots have peripety and anagnosis, which we will be discussing now. So according to Aristotle, if plot is ideal, if it is an ideal plot, it should not be simple. It should be very complex. According to Aristotle, an ideal plot should be very complex. And then there's a third kind of tragic plot, which is depicting incidents of sufferings. There are certain terms that you should be familiar when you learn Aristotle's idea of tragedy. One is hamartia. Hamartia means tragic flow of the hero. The hero will have a tragic flow, and this tragic flow will result in the character's downfall, or characters, usually at the end of the play, the character will die. And the death of the character will be caused by his tragic flow, which is called hamartia. Then we have peripety, peripety or peripetia. It is the reversal of the agent's intention. The situation, the hero's action will be considered opposite. The hero will do something, but it is understood as opposite. Consequence of the hero's action will be opposite of what he is intended. So the hero does something, but the consequence will be the exact opposite. That is peripety or peripetia. Then we have anagnosis. Anagnosis means the discovery of the recognition of truth. So the character, what happens is there will be a change from ignorance to knowledge. So it's a discovery of truth or recognition of truth. There will be certain signs or marks which makes the character to understand the truth. Then Aristotle also laid out the quantitative parts of a tragedy. The quantitative parts of tragedy includes prologue. There will be a prologue. Prologue is the entire part which precedes the parode. Next is parode. So prologue is the part which is just before parode. We have episode. Episode is the entire part of the tragedy. And the entire part of the tragedy where the action happens, where all the incidents happens in the episode. Then we have exode. Exode is the entire part of the tragedy after the last chorus. The chorus is included in the choric part. The choric part is the song part, which is divided into parode, Stasimon and Chorus. Parode is the entrance song. The chorus enters through parode. Parode is the entrance song of the chorus. Stasimon is the choric song. And then we have Chorus. Chorus is the joint lamentation. Lamentation is this, maybe at the end. At the end, when the character dies, there is a lamentation. That is Chorus. The actors and chorus together sings a song. That is Chorus. So there will choric part is divided into three. There will be introduction or the entrance part. Then there will be a stasimon, which is sung, the chorus sung through the entire episode. Then we have chorus, which is the lamentation, joint lamentation by chorus and the actors together. That is the 6 quantitative parts of a tragedy. Did you understand? Do you want me to repeat?
Yes, ma'am. Need to repeat.
Okay, you want me to repeat? Okay. According to Aristotle, there are, one second. So Aristotle talks about certain quantitative part. According to him, there are 6 quantitative parts of a tragedy. Based on the plot, first is prologue. Then we have episode and then exode. So prologue is the beginning part, just an introduction part. Okay. And then we have episode. In the episode part, the actual action takes place. The entire story of the tragedy takes place in the episode. Then we have exode. Exode is the entire part after the action. After whatever happens, there is the exode, which is the ending part. In between, we have chorus. The choric part, which is divided into 3, that is parode, stasimon, and chorus. Parode is the entrance of the chorus. It happens with prologue. Prologue and parode comes together. First, there will be an introduction of the play, that is prologue. Then there will be parode, that is the introduction of the chorus, the entrance of the chorus. Then there will be episode, the actions takes place. Then along with that, we have stasimon, where the chorus will sing song in between the episode, in between the play, they will sing song. Then at the end, after the death of the character, we have exode. For the downfall of the character, we have exode. Exode is the ending part. Along with exode, we have chorus, that is a lamentation. It's a sad song. At the end of the tragedy, the characters and the actors and the chorus sing together the lamentation, that is the chorus. Did you understand? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
You should connect prologue with parode, episode, stasimon, exode, and chorus. Okay. Yes. Okay. After plot, we have characters, characterization. So according to Aristotle, there are 4 essential traits of a successful characterization. For a character to be a successful one, there are 4 essential traits. They are goodness, appropriatedness, likeness to life, and consistency. Goodness means the character must be good. The character must be the epitome of good. It should be good. Whatever the action, whatever they do, whatever they say, everything will be good. Okay. That is the goodness part. Then we have appropriateness. Appropriateness is the character must be appropriate. They should be true to themselves. A woman must be womanly, a man should be manly, or the man should not be womanly, or woman should not be manly. They are supposed to be what they are. This is what they say in appropriateness. A slave must be slavish. Like that. So they should be true to their type. They should be appropriate to the type of the character they are. Whatever their characters are, whatever their role is, whatever they are supposed to be, they should be like that. That is appropriateness. Then likeness to life. The character must have likeness, that is true to life. They should not have extreme personalities. They should have an intermediate personalities. A character should be a mixture of good and evil, a mixture of virtue and weakness, like all the human beings. Is there any human being who only do truth, only do true things, only do good things. And there is no character, or there is no human being who is entirely evil, right? Human beings are a mixture of good and evil. So same like that, the character should also be good and mixture of good and evil. Okay. It should be true to how human beings are. Then consistency. The character must be consistent, true to their own nature. They should not, like if the character is a rash character, it should be rash. If it is a gentle character, they should be gentle. They should be true to their nature also. How like they are true to their life, they should be true to their nature also. They should be consistent. These are the essential traits of a character. I already talked about hamartia. Hamartia is the tragic. Hamartia is a Greek, in Greek means missing the mark. It is the tragic flaw or the miscalculation of the tragic hero which dooms him to his fall. So there is a tragic flaw in the character of the hero, and because of this tragic flaw, the character dooms, or the character has a downfall. That is called hamartia. Okay. It may not be associated with moral lapse. It can be an error in judgment also. Can I give you a work? Can you do it in the next class? So there are mainly 4 tragedies by Shakespeare: Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, and Othello. Okay. Can you find the hamartia or the tragic flow of the characters in these 4 tragedies? Can you do it in the next class? Can you do it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is a work for next class. Okay. Find out the hamartia or the tragic flow of the characters in Shakespeare's tragedies: Othello, Macbeth, Hamlet, and King Lear. That is a work for next class. So that is about character. Next is diction and style. Diction is the choice and arrangement of words. Diction is the choice and arrangement of words and images in a literary composition. So diction is the arrangement of the words. Whatever the characters say, the arrangement of words is called diction. It can be of ordinary speech. It can be of foreign words. There can be metaphorical words, ornamental words, new coined words. All these words can be involved in the dialogues, and it is the arrangement of these words and images. It is called diction. Then style. The poet's style, according to Aristotle, must be clear and it must not be mean. This is what Aristotle says. It should be clear. Whatever the style is, it should be very clear. It should not be obscure. It should not be filled with jargon. It should be very clear. That is what style should be. That's how a style should be. Then we have thought and spectacle. Thought is the response of the character concerned to the situations introduced by the dramatist. So the dramatist will introduce a situation. So thought is the character's response. So this is how, through thought, it is how the character responds to a particular situation which is introduced by the dramatist. The character may approve or disapprove of something, right? Can be thought. It can be used to disapprove something. And thought is not separate from emotion. It can also be emotional response. It can also be some speeches to exaggerate or diminish of the importance or significance of anything. So it is through the thought that the character does or responds or act in a situation. So the character act in a situation or responds in a situation through the thought process. Then we have spectacle. Spectacle is actually it is the audience. It's the site of the disaster. That is what Aristotle calls spectacle. So when the audience sees the disaster happening on the stage, it is a spectacle which arouses pity and fear in the audience. I said, no, there is a catharsis, when you see the actions, when you see the downfall, when you see the tragic life of the character, you feel pity and fear. The audience will feel pity and fear. That is what spectacle is. Without the spectacle, there won't be, it is very difficult. It's not easy to have a tragedy. In order for the tragedy to be complete, there should be a spectacle. Spectacle helps to be spectacle helps the tragedy to be artistic. Without a spectacle, it is less artistic. So, for example, if a family is murdered, if someone in a member of a family is murdered, example, for a member of a family is murdered without letting know anyone, so people does not know who killed him. Okay, so it is better to keep the people in ignorance and then later revealing it. So then there will be an artistic value, right? There will be a artistic pleasure in the in the work of art. So without spectacle, does not have a artistic pleasure. Okay. Then observations on comedy and epic. Aristotle's observation on comedy and epic. What do you mean by comedy? Comedy is a representation of characters of a lower type. According to Aristotle, comedy is a representation of characters of a lower type. They are very ridiculous. He considers comedy as it's used by a species of the ugly people. It's like a what very lower section people uses comedy. Okay. And epic and tragedy are similar. They are very serious of action. Okay. It's an imitation of serious action. It is better than average. Comedy is lower than average, whereas epic and tragedy is better than average. Okay. See, epic is similar, same like tragedy. It is whole and complete with a beginning, middle, and end. It has a turning point. All the tragedy has plot, character, thought, and diction, just like a tragedy. Sorry, the epic has all this just like a tragedy. So this is what Aristotle talks about. Is it clear? So in today's, we covered first 2 units. So first we talked about criticism. What do you mean by criticism? What are the functions of criticism? Different kinds of criticism. Okay. So read the textbook, and if you have any doubt, ask me in the next class. Okay.
Okay.
And then what?
It's okay, ma'am.
Okay. So in the next unit, we discussed about Aristotle's Poetics. Actually, literally, the theory paper, the criticism paper is a bit difficult because you have to understand all the theoretical part. So you can't do without reading the textbook. Okay. In the Aristotle's Poetics part, we discussed about the theory of imitation, which is important. And also the theory of tragedy is also very important. You should learn the definition of tragedy, then the elements of tragedy. This is what discussed in the second unit. So read the textbook, and if you have any doubt, ask me in the next class. We'll also have a revision after completing all the units. We'll have a revision. Then we can discuss the important questions that will come in the exam. Okay. Do you have any doubts? Do you have any doubts, or do you want any clarifications? Is this okay? Are you getting the ideas? Are you able to understand it? Any doubts? Any clarifications needed?
No doubts, ma'am. Nice explanation. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So in the next class, we can discuss next theory. So read the textbook and come in next class. If you have any doubt, ask me. Okay, I think I can wind up the class, right? Can we wind up the class?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so see you next week.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. You can leave the class. So can I wind up the class? I'm leaving. Okay. Thank you.
It's okay,
Bye.
ma'am. Thank you.